This is the Voice of the Land podcast.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the VTL Extra clip of the week here exclusively on our YouTube channel at Voice of the Land podcast. Of course, we are partnered with Web Streaming Studio by LPV and NEO Sports Network and our sponsor, DP Construction LLC. Find all their information on Facebook at DP Construction LLC. And of course, find us on Facebook at Voice of the Land, on Twitter and Instagram, where we post all of these clips and links to the clips at VTL_pod. I am one of your hosts, Kevin Arnold. Alongside me, as always, my brother, Nick Paulus, and our producer extraordinaire behind the proverbial glass, which he will be definitely behind that proverbial glass a lot on this extra clip of the week. He's going to be kind of more of a sit behind and criticize or critique our top 5 lists this week that we have prepared for you guys. This week, I know we've kind of talked about our top athletes of all time and maybe top players in different sports or top athletes overall. We wanted to narrow it down and Paulus kind of put this out to the group, and as soon as he did, I made my list right away. It's not that it was easy, but it was a little bit more, just kind of flowed a little bit easier than some of the other lists when I come in with movies and like, oh, well, I don't really have a top 5, but here's 15 for you. We wanted to narrow it down to 5. Here's 15 movies, and you just narrow it down yourself. No, I do have a top 5 list this week as well. Paulus is getting his all squared away there. Again, if you haven't listened to the podcast yet and you're wondering, well, why is Paulus sitting with cabinets and computers behind him like we did when we were all quarantined? Well, if you haven't listened yet, he is quarantined. His wife does have COVID-19. Again, our continuous prayers out to Kelly, his wife, and to Nick and the family out there, just because we know how serious this is, and hopefully she's able to recover soon because we know how strong she is, and she's a big supporter of the podcast as well. So all of our thoughts are out to her and you, Paulus, like we mentioned on the podcast, all the prayers that we can send and all the positive vibes we can send to you guys at this time.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And I truly do appreciate it. Once again, Kelly, caught COVID, so we're currently quarantined. This is day 2 of it. Just everyone wear your mask. I mean, Kelly did, but she's a frontline worker. She's first one to see the patients, whenever they come into the, to her workspace and everything like that. So we're thinking that she caught it sometime earlier this week. Just be safe, be honest with your doctors. If you don't feel right, go get checked out and, go from there. Let's try to, kill this disease and, stop it from ever growing even more.
Yeah, let's stop the waves now so that it doesn't continue to spread. I mean, this podcast is always, and these extra clips throughout this whole COVID crisis has always been dedicated to our frontline workers like Kelly and like our very own Stipe Miocic, who is a frontline worker but is fighting for the heavyweight title here tonight. We kind of talked about him on the podcast this week as well. And even, I forgot to mention it last week, and I, felt horrible that I did this and even forgot to mention on the podcast, but thoughts and prayers out to the Goddard family as well, as Dick Goddard recently passed away. Famous meteorologist here in Northeast Ohio for Fox 8 and all of the transitions that broadcasting media has gone through, but also a huge proponent for animal rights, animal protection, and huge on that. I loved listening to him do the weather. He always had such great detail with it, but I loved even more when they had the segments of him at the kennel or with the dogs that came from the kennel, and these sweet dogs, whether they were older or younger, and some of the cats and all the other animals that he was always fighting for. And the Woolly Bear Festival will not be the same in Vermillion, Ohio without Dick Goddard, but we can all learn something from Dick Goddard, and our thoughts and prayers continue to go out to his family during this difficult time as well. Now, one of the top guys in Cleveland transitioning from, making sure that we honor those that have come before us to athletes that we are so into, and we love sports here at Voice of the Land. That's what we're all about. That's what we want to do for our career. We want to be able to talk sports, and we've gotten to see some pretty great athletes just in our time. So, Paulus, I don't know how hard it was for you to get a top 5 list for this, but I'm going to let you start. Your top 5 athletes you have seen in your lifetime.
All right, now just to reiterate for everyone, this isn't the best or
Right.
greatest athletes that we've ever seen.
Right.
This is our favorite list.
Yes.
Um, so I'm going to start with number 5.
Hmm.
This will actually surprise a lot of people, especially my wife, who is a huge Green Bay Packers fan. Brett Favre. I loved everything about Brett
Mm.
Favre. The way that he would just get out on the field, and he's the gunslinger mentality
Yeah.
is Brett Favre, and I love that about him. 3-time MVP, Super Bowl MVP, been to 2 Super Bowls. He should have gotten to the Super Bowl against the Saints, whenever he was with the Vikings, but ended up getting mauled, during Bountygate.
Yeah.
But I loved everything about Brett Favre, and he was actually, whenever I first started playing fantasy football, like he was my quarterback. Like that was, I had to get Brett Favre. So yeah, he's right up there. Once again, 3-time MVP. I absolutely loved him. However, he's not my favorite football player of all time. That comes at number 4. Now,
Okay.
my number 4 is Mike Doss. Now, a lot of people, you might forget who Mike Doss is, but he was
I
the
don't.
strong safety for the Ohio State Buckeyes back in their 2002 2003 national championship year. He's a 3-time All American. The reason why I have him so high on this list is because I watched him play high school football, yeah, at Canton McKinley. My
Mm.
dad lived in Canton, just right around the corner from the Pro Football Hall of Fame,
Okay.
growing up, and we would go and watch Canton McKinley games, and he was everywhere on that field. I wanted to be like Mike Doss so bad. He played safety, linebacker. I've seen him line up at running back. I mean, the guy was everywhere out on the football field, and loved every moment of watching him play. And then he went to the Buckeyes, dominated there, got drafted, I believe it was in the second round by the Colts, and ended up winning a Super Bowl with them. I loved Mike Doss. I'm not going to lie to you. I try and get Mike Doss on here. I tried getting Mike Doss on this podcast earlier this week. I sent him a message on Twitter and asked
Yeah.
him, like, "Hey man, follow me. I need to DM you something." Like that is, I'm trying to get Mike Doss on here because I think it would be the coolest thing ever. Number 3 might surprise you, LeBron. Now, LeBron at number 3, I know he brought the championship to Cleveland. I mean,
Hmm.
he's got to be on my top 5 list.
Yes.
Because
I would be
because
surprised if
he
he
brought
wasn't. I would only be surprised if he wasn't.
right. Well, and the thing for me is that had he, and we talked about this on the podcast before, had he stayed and maybe won us another championship
Hmm.
or anything like that, maybe he's my number 1. But he has left twice, so I still have mixed feelings about that. But
Right.
I will forever be grateful that he came back and won us the championship like he promised he would, and he did. My number 2 player is Omar Vizquel, 11-time Gold Glove winner. I met him whenever I was like 11 years old. I thought it was the coolest thing. I still got the picture somewhere in this house. I got an autographed bat by him. I wanted to be Omar so bad, but I was never that athletic. Like I always
Hmm.
wanted to play short, and I was always too short and too fat and too slow. So, but Omar did everything cool. I mean the flips to Robbie, and yeah, I mean diving plays everywhere out on the field. I thought Omar was the coolest thing in Cleveland forever. And I
Yeah.
never thought that I'd ever idolize anyone else here in Cleveland.
I
And then
got you.
obviously once again LeBron showed up.
Yeah.
Uh, and then my number 1 player is the sweetest swing I have ever seen in my entire life.
I already knew who your
Ken
number
Griffey.
one was before we did this.
Right. I mean, absolutely. I mean, we've talked about it before. Ken Griffey Jr., if it wasn't for the injuries that he started getting whenever he was with Cincinnati and everything
Hmm.
like that, he would have been the greatest player of all time. No doubter, Hall of Famer, first ballot, obviously, but he would have been the greatest player of all time. Ended up with 630 home runs, and that's like missing like 5 years worth of action. I mean, the guy played, he was 13-time All-Star. Once again, 630 home runs, and the coolest swing, the greatest smile, the hat backwards. I mean, he was everything to my. I loved everything about Ken Griffey Jr. Some honorable mentions right before we get to yours.
Yeah.
Barry Bonds. I loved watching Barry Bonds play. I mean, every time that he came up to bat, it was big time. It was must see TV. Even when he got walked, it was must see TV. And then Ladainian Tomlinson. I loved LT
Oh,
so much.
that blacked out
LT
visor is just, I can just,
with the blacked out visor, the Charger, the powder blue uniforms that they had in San Diego. That honestly, he made me want to go to San Diego before I knew I was going to San Diego. Like he was so damn cool. I loved LT. He was also a fantasy running back that I absolutely needed to have on my team, and I mean he's one of the best ever. So Ladainian rounds up my honorable mentions.
yeah, I'd actually say LT is one of my honorable mentions as well. Didn't make my list either, but I can just,
Mhm.
when you say his name, like you said, I think back to that blacked out visor and like that, like coming at you, like those, yeah, with the powder blue uniforms, that coming at those camera angles they would have on the football
The
field when he's like
jukes.
running. Yeah, when he's running straight at the camera, and I mean one of the best running backs, best athletes I've kind of ever seen. My list starts out with at number 5 with the Cleveland Indian as well. Uh, it is Kenny Lofton. Now, uh, I think Omar may have been my favorite, and Kenny Lofton short behind him. But at least in terms of athletes, so the way I kind of took this list is like athlete and feeling like the way that they played, they could do so many other things in sports. Like they have like the whole world of sports kind of open to them based on how they play. And Kenny Lofton was, I mean, I see that catch at the wall like that. It wasn't just me in my backyard trying to, hit that game-winning home run. It wasn't imagining that. It was the guy, like I would like try to like throw a ball up as high as I could, like towards the fence, and then run and try to like catch it over the fence like Kenny Lofton. Like that's what I tried to do as a kid, was more the defensive side than it was the offensive side of things. I mean, you just look at him. I mean, he was, of course, he played. He was a 6-time All-Star, 4-time Gold Glove winner. He played for so many different teams, but here in Cleveland, we know that he is a forever etched in Cleveland Indians lore and the history of this team. I mean, he ended with a 299 batting average, like just like .01 away from a 300 average for his career. Now, not that many home runs, but he wasn't that guy. He was going to get on the base paths. He was going to cause problems for the opposing pitcher, and he'd steal home occasionally as well. Like it was the speed, it was the athleticism to jump over that wall. It was the just the way he played that game, and just the quintessential leadoff hitter. I know Ricky Henderson is that the one that everybody kind of goes to. I think a lot of people in baseball history would probably put him, like if you were to do like a 9, like a starting 9 in baseball history, I think Ricky Henderson would be on a lot of people's list for that leadoff hitter. I'd probably put Kenny Lofton there just because like I felt like he had that kind of an impact from that leadoff spot. Number 4, kind of going off the books a little bit, Michael Phelps. Michael Phelps is my number 4. Now, I've talked about this, I think, a little bit with you guys, but my dad is a swim coach, and when I grew up at 3 years old, I was throwing the pool, and I was like, learn how to swim, like float. Now, like start actually, like doing freestyle and backstroke. Like it was at an early age I was put into the pool, and I was taught to swim. So in the Olympics, swimming is one of those things that I always watch. And one thing I kind of go back to is the 2000 Olympics in Sydney, Australia, and all these guys start wearing these full body suits, and it's like this, like the new craze and everything. And there are certain advantages to all those different suits that they do and everything. But Michael Phelps could, it doesn't matter. Like that guy is that talented. He was that freak of an athlete, and he ended up with 28 medals in Olympic history. I think it's the most decorated Olympian of all time, and 23 of those 28 were gold medals, including believe it was the 2008 Olympics where he, because Athens, I think, was his first one. It was either 2008 or 2012. I believe it was 2008 where he won 8 gold medals. He beat Mark Spitz's record of 7 gold medals at one Olympics. He got 8 gold medals at that Olympics, and I was always like copying him. If I was running track, I would do that start that he had on the blocks where he would like reach his arms back and then just flop the big wingspan that he had. And you just hear like the hands like go all the way back to his back and getting himself psyched up. I know he had the instance, and it was really disappointing to see him in between a couple Olympics deal with the instance of getting caught with weed and dealing with that. But that was an athlete where he was eating thousands of calories a day, working out 3 different times a day in the pool, working on his craft. One of the best athletes I've ever seen in the pool.
I think we can overlook a little weed for Michael Phelps. I think we can overlook that.
Yeah. Now, I didn't know that his middle name was Fred. My dad's name is Freddie. Like, it's actually Freddie, Fredy. I don't know if my dad ever knew that, but like he latched on to Michael Phelps like right away. And he's like, he's breaking down the film for me as we're going to practices and stuff. So definitely a connection there to the pool, but Michael Phelps, one of my top athletes of all time. At number 3, it might be a little surprising to be a little bit this low, but Megatron, Calvin Johnson. I mean, career ended too soon, but a guy that was, he was going to be that next big thing at the wide receiver spot. And he pretty much was for the duration of his career. I know that he was kind of stuck in, we have had football hell here with the Cleveland Browns for most of the time since they've been back, but Detroit is kind of right there with us with the Lions. But you always knew that Calvin Johnson was going to put up the big numbers. I mean, 6-time Pro Bowler, 3-time first-team All-Pro. He led the league in receiving yards in 2011, 2012, and just a freak of an athlete that could just do anything. Like he was that big, tall, 6'5" wide receiver that you wanted and could do had all the speed of a little guy, had the height that you wanted to go over any DB, no matter if you had some height or length of DB or not. That guy, that's one of my favorite football players outside the Cleveland Browns. Like I tried to go outside of Cleveland sports as much as I could. That's one of those guys that I just, loved watching play the wide receiver position. At number 2, because I know you guys all know my number 1, so there's no surprise there. At number 2, Lionel Messi for Barcelona. I know that this podcast comes a day after they took a horrible, horrible loss to Bayern Munich in the UEFA Champions League yesterday. They lost 8-2. They really lost 9-1 because Bayern Munich put one of Barcelona's goals. They scored an own goal, so they scored one goal for Barcelona themselves. So it was basically 9-1. I mean, but Lionel Messi, I know a lot of people like to talk about Cristiano Ronaldo, and he's kind of the big face for soccer. People know Messi's name, but he's not as publicized. He's not out there in advertisements as much as Cristiano, because Cristiano's got the Nike. I think Messi's with Adidas, so it's not as widely popular there. But I find him to be the better soccer player than Cristiano Ronaldo. Cristiano is a better scorer, but he's able to kind of hide out and just kind of wait for his opportunity. He's very opportunistic when he scores. Lionel Messi's having to go from the middle of the field, or middle of the pitch, as they say, and try to dribble through guys because he's got 3 or 4 guys triple teaming, quadruple teaming him, getting around him, pushing him down, and he's a small guy, so he's taken a lot of beating throughout a game, and he's still able to get through. If you watch some of his highlights from a young kid to now, like there is no change in his game, and he's able to pick out players. He gets a lot more assists. He's not always trying to look to score, but when he scores, I mean, it is some of the most spectacular, mind-boggling things, how he was able to get through these tight spaces of defenders all around him and score. And Lionel Messi is quick, he is talented, and he takes some blame for the loss yesterday, but I know that a lot of people say Cristiano's better. My best player in soccer today is Lionel Messi, and I love watching that guy play, and he does take some blame for yesterday's loss, but Bleacher Report sending me notifications that Messi lost to Bayern Munich. One guy lost to all 11 on the other team, or all 15 that they ended up playing yesterday. No, Messi can only do so much. You're Barcelona. You're one of the best teams in all of the world, and you're supposed to be getting the best players. You can't just do it all. He's getting up there in age. He can't just do it all, and he's still having that kind of an impact on the team. Their defense was horrible yesterday. I mean, it looked like rec league soccer, like just like dribble right through, and it was bad. Bayern Munich's a great team. They're very powerful, but it was horrible to watch yesterday. I was all hyped up, and then I left work like, oh, that was not soccer that I was expecting today. But I digress. And of course, at number 1, LeBron freaking James. He is that athlete among athletes. 6'8", 250, 6'9", 260. I think it's always too. Everybody wants to give him like extra height, extra weight, but
Right.
for the first
Eventually,
time,
it'll be like 8'4", 290 pounds.
yeah. I mean, this guy has done it all. I know he hasn't won the amount of championships that Jordan has, or even Russell, and you can debate whether he's the best of all time or not. I will have those conversations all day long, but he is the best athlete I have seen in my entire lifetime. The way he takes care of his body, the way that he is always prepared, could easily, even still to this day, probably transition to 1 year being a tight end in the NFL, one that doesn't block, more the ones that are just split out wide and being more like that wide receiver. He could still do that to this day. He has that kind of body type and physical stature to do that. And he is a freight train coming down the lane. He has the speed of a point guard. That's why he's a point forward, will always be a point forward in his whole career. And what he has done for the city of Cleveland, the city of Akron, off the floor, and the way he gives back to the community, and just his overall basketball acumen and IQ and the way he plays the game. I mean, look, he's 17 years in. I know that the season got cut short. He is still the assist leader for the first time in his career in the NBA. He averaged 10.2 assists. I mean, you usually saw him around 8 or 9. He averaged double-digit assists, still with like 25, 26 points per game, 7, 8 rebounds. I mean, this guy does it all and is my number 1, will always be my number 1 athlete I've ever seen live. Peter, as you think about our list here today, who has the better list? Who needs to kind of maybe rethink things, and anybody that you feel like we left off, like one player that we left off that we should have seen over the last 20 years?
Well, I have to agree with you both on LeBron. I mean, it still pains me that he left us twice. I'm
Yes.
glad he got us a ring. But just in terms of just an amazing athlete, he's definitely, up there. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I'm kind of surprised that Nick with Brett Favre there, and didn't
Right.
didn't mention his awesome cameo in Something About Mary.
That's true. Yeah.
The funny thing is, I think Favre originally played for Atlanta.
Yes. Yep.
And I went to
Drafted
college.
by Atlanta.
Yeah, I went to college with John. Oh, what the heck is his last name now? Budenberg, who was, I believe, the first player drafted by the NFL out of the University of Akron. And he was drafted by the Cleveland Browns. And he actually ended up playing with Favre in Atlanta.
Oh, wow.
And so he's told me I have some interesting stories that he's told me about those days. So
that's the Patreon style of VTL that's coming soon. That's
But,
not even
right.
just YouTube
But,
extra. That's paid for.
But Favre, though, you're right, great quarterback. I always think of Tom Brady.
Mhm.
I know there's been controversy there, but you look at Brady's career, and it kind of kills me that Belichick went to New England after he left Cleveland, and he's done so well. Because it's consistently, it's a culture of winning, and
Sure.
the fact that Tom Brady is as old as he is, and he's still out. He's out there, and the team was in contention. But for the most part, I think Kevin's list was probably seemed more diverse. But Michael,
Yeah.
You're right. Michael Phelps, amazing watching him in the
Yeah.
Olympics. I think of that made me think of actually. Before you even brought that up, I was thinking of like some of the best athletes I had seen, and I was thinking of like Simone Biel, like some of the gymnasts that we've seen in the Olympics.
I mean, the U.S. has just been dominating U.S. gymnastics. I mean, you had
Definitely
Nastia Liukin, and then you had Simone Biles, and I can't remember the one kind of in between there. Was it Gabrielle Douglas or?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, and it I mean, just you look at that, and like one of my sisters did gymnastics, and I remember getting dragged to the, practices and the meets when I was a kid and being bored out of my mind, but the stuff that they do, the routines and just all the. Because I remember in gym class in high school having to do like the gymnastics, thing,
Oh man, that obstacle course in elementary phys ed, doing all the gymnastics.
The pommel horse where you just basically run and like flop over it because that's about as much as we could do, No, I think both of the lists were great lists. I really can't find fault with them. The Kenny Lofton, Omar Vizquel, that kind of thing. I mean, I could see both of those on a top 5 list because as soon as you said Lofton, first thought in my head was that catch.
Yeah.
That catch at the wall, but then Omar, just always smiling, nothing got past him.
Yeah.
It was, I can't fault you for either of those picks. So I think, great lists.
Every time you thought a ball was past Vizquel, I mean, it was just, he was there. Like, you would
I don't
teleport from like 5 feet away to where the ball was.
Although I will say one of my favorite Indians memories is when Asdrubal Cabrera did the unassisted triple play.
Yeah.
And he was a good. I thought he was a good second baseman, but it's like that play always sticks in my mind because I remember watching that game. I wish I was at it, but I remember watching that game and I'm like, what the hell just happened, right? So, and I've watched that clip a few times on YouTube every now and then, and the only other thing I was thinking of was like the Bosa brothers at Ohio State.
Yeah.
Because was it Joey Bosa? I'm gonna get him confused.
Joey was first. Then he went to the Chargers.
But Joey was the one that was dating Brady Quinn's sister. Was it?
No, that's AJ Hawk.
Yeah, that's AJ. Yeah, that's AJ.
Oh, that's
Hawk.
AJ Hawk. That's right.
Yeah.
It wasn't a Bosa. That was AJ Hawk.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you're right. But that's another great memory was just watching AJ Hawk just beat the crap out of his, I think, future brother-in-law. So
right. They got married, and I remember she was wearing a Brady and Hawk combo jersey.
Split jersey. Yeah, I remember that
Down the middle.
And
right. And that was for the Fiesta Bowl that Ohio State, I think, won like 40 to 20 or something.
Oh, yeah. I think there was, I forget how many sacks, but he sacked him a number of times in that game.
Yeah.
It was just that's some of those great memories. But yeah, like I said, both your lists, I honestly can't think of anyone else better. I'm dating myself, but thinking of Stipe's fight tonight, I did enjoy watching Mike Tyson box, just because he was just an animal.
If I was a little bit older, Peter, you're absolutely right. If that Tyson is right there, like if I could watch Tyson live, and obviously we're going to, he's apparently going to be putting on a fight here relatively soon. It's going to be against Roy Jones, who was also a great fighter as well. But I think Tyson back in the day would have been the most prime time and probably would have been my number one. Had I been born like 5 or 6 years earlier, it would have been Tyson.
Yeah, I mean, watching those Tyson fights back in the day, my friends and I would all get together and get the pay-per-view and, sit around and watch that. Those were great fights.
Nick, that might be an interesting conversation for us one of these days, is kind of the athletes we didn't get to see, like a top 5 or even just a list of athletes we always wanted to see. Like, I mean, Tyson, Muhammad Ali.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
I mean, I kind of saw a lot more of the highlights of Jordan once I started to understand sports more than, seeing it actually live. I mean, even for me, basketball lore, Pistol Pete Maravich is one guy that I watched so many highlight tapes of, but would have loved to watch him live. So an interesting conversation for the future. But we have been so fortunate here in Ohio and Northeast Ohio area for all the athletes that have come through here, whether amateur or professional. And Peter, you brought up a great point about the Olympics too, with the gymnastics. I know that there's a Netflix thing about what U.S. gymnastics have kind of gone through to get to that point and the unfortunate circumstances there behind the scenes. But I mean, even Allie Raceman and the Fab Five that they had go through the Olympics, and you have all the runners, Usain Bolt, the guys that have to guys and girls that train for marathons or riding the bike and the triathlon, like those athletes that, again, another thing that was taken by COVID this year that another sports element we don't get, and all those athletes train for every 4 years to be at the top of their game in their sport. And you see so many individual sports or team sports, you want to be at your top of your game every 4 years, and that's their big moment to shine, because you don't really get a lot of the televised publicity for them most of the year. But, the unfortunate side of COVID, and hopefully we do get Olympics next year, but a lot of great athletes that you could pick just from Olympic history too. But that'll wrap up our extra clip of the week. Let us know, who do you think had the better list between Paulus and myself? We'll make it a little competitive this week. May have to write them out on a sheet or put a picture up on social media and get the responses. Who had the better list? We'll just kind of have a little friendly competition this week, and then give us your list. Who are the top 5 athletes you have been able to see in your lifetime? Because we've all lived different lives, been able to see different things and experience different things. So we're always open to everyone else's experiences and checking out something we may not be as well versed on in sports. Like I'm going to check out UFC tonight and definitely educate myself more on that sport as a big sport here in the world. But for Nick Paulus and our producer extraordinaire, Peter Tellep, I'm Kevin Arl, reminding you, tune in to the full podcast on Google, Spotify, Apple, and here on YouTube. Leave your comments below. And as always, don't let anyone ever tell you it's just a game. We love you all, 3,000. Prayers out to all of our frontline workers, anyone dealing with COVID. And we will see you all on the next edition of the Voice of the Land podcast.